This is the Real Estate Investing 365 podcast, your go-to source for real estate investing strategies so you can start living the life you want and get where you want to go. With your host, Justin Hanna.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Real Estate Investing 365. I got my buddy on here, Clint Bartlett from Omaha, Nebraska. He's running an awesome wholesale company out there. What's up, Clint? How's it going?
Justin, how are you, sir? I'm fantastic. We pretty much finished up our good weather for about the next 6 months here in Omaha. So basically just settling into depression mode for the next for the rest of the year into the spring.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not sunshine, happy cows and like California out there in Omaha.
Yeah, it is not.
Cool, man. Well, I know a little bit about you. I've met you before. We're kind of developed a relationship, but why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about you, where you come from, what did you do, because you didn't always do real estate investing. What did you do before you got into real estate? Sure
thing. I will share as much or as little as you want. You cut me off if I start going too long. Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, somewhere in the middle of America, and grew up not really knowing what I wanted to do. I grew up in the Mormon church, and I went on a mission for my church. So I went to college for a semester, then I went on a 2-year mission for my church to Las Vegas, Nevada, came home from my mission and went to Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and got a degree in social work. And at the time there was a couple of reasons why I went for that degree. It was the easiest of all of the degrees because it was very like social studies, like easy class. So it was an easy degree. There was a lot of girls in the program, and not a lot of guys. So I liked it's a numbers game. And also at the time I was thinking I want to be in a career that helps people, and social work seemed like a good way to do that. I got married my last semester of school. And as I started looking around at jobs, realized that being a social worker was basically, you were living on the poverty line. So I ended up just interviewing at random places, and I took a job with Frito Lay in Southern California, in Rancho Cucamonga, California. And at the time, my brand new wife, and she got pregnant very quickly after we got married. We moved down to Rancho Cucamonga, and I started working in food manufacturing. So I worked in the manufacturing facility as a frontline manager of the Funyuns department, making Funyuns for Frito Lay.
Oh yeah. What year was this?
This was in 2006 when we moved there. And I mean, literally just got, married in December, and then, finished my last semester of school and moved right down to Southern California. So okay. I spent a little over 5 years in Southern California. We lived in Rancho Cucamonga. We rented an apartment there, and then we moved to Upland, California for a couple of years. And then we bought our first home during the big crash in California. So it was awesome. In 2009, we bought our first home in North Fontana, Fontucky, some people call it affectionately. But we bought a house that was a foreclosure. And I think, when we moved in 2006, there was never a chance that we were going to be able to afford a property. I remember looking at condos that were $400,000, close to where we were living and renting in Rancho Cucamonga. And I was like, well, this is pointless. But luckily the crash happened. Lucky for us, I guess. The crash happened and we were able to buy that foreclosure. And plus it was during the time that they had the $8,000 credit, first home buyer's credit. So I believe we basically got into our home with zero money out of pocket because it was an FHA loan. So we didn't need that much down anyway. Bought our first house and lived there for a couple of years in North Fontana. The house backed up to the freeway. So it was pretty cool. And started having kids. We actually have 4 boys now, but we had 3 boys at the time, and decided that we'd want to look outside of raising our kids in California. No offense to California, but it just kind of felt like we were in just a concrete jungle. And, I wanted to give my kids the same experience that I had growing up, where you don't have to lock the door and the kids can run about the neighborhood and go see friends. And that's what they do now. So it's pretty cool. We've achieved that, but unfortunately we don't get to enjoy the climate that we did enjoy in California. So I often miss that, but Ended up taking a job with ConAgra, which is another food company. So I stayed in food manufacturing and moved back to Omaha in 2012, very beginning of 2012. And I had a couple of different roles with them. I worked in a manufacturing facility in Lincoln, Nebraska for a few years. And Lincoln's about a 45-minute commute. And I think that was about the time that I started to realize that I was in a rat race, that I was stuck in my career, or at least stuck, that I felt like I was going to be stuck if I was working for somebody else. So when I started commuting back and forth between Omaha and Lincoln, I started listening to podcasts, and I was gravitating towards investing podcasts. My lifelong best friend and business partner, Jeff Cohn, was in real estate already. He was at the time starting his real estate team, and he had jumped right into real estate with his parents right after he graduated from college, and did very well just as a solo agent. And I started to watch Jeff build this team. So he went from having an assistant and then having, team members that he was adding on, other agents that he was adding to the team. He started to be very successful and started to build some other businesses. And him and I had started to have some preliminary conversation around, well, we should do something together. We should have some sort of business together, and it should involve real estate. And we'd both always been interested in investing. I grew up working for my dad, who was a contractor. So I'd grown up, working on houses and understood a little bit of that aspect of things with nothing else. So I started listening to podcasts. Some of the big podcasts I was listening to, Justin Williams was one of the first ones that I was listening to. And I don't know if he still has his podcast now, but he was Flipping HQ or something like that. Justin Colby in Arizona is a wholesaler who's one that, these are just random people that I found that I still identify with today. In fact, I'm good friends now with Justin Colby, which is really cool from where I was to where I am now to have the relationship that I have with some of these people that I looked up to and like aspired to be like. And now I feel like I'm at least on path to be where they're at, or my business is at least similar to theirs now.
Uh-huh.
So Justin Colby was a big one. And then just whenever I had a chance at work, I would watch YouTube videos on, wholesaling, what wholesaling is, what real estate investing, or what I started to learn was that, first of all, listening to those podcasts gave me a lot of confidence, because as you listen to podcasts with people like me and you on it, Justin, no offense, we're both pretty simple dudes. We're pretty simple people.
Yeah.
I started to gain confidence that regular people could do very well in the business, because podcasts are, generally speaking, it's just people interviewing each other. And these guys were super successful in their investing businesses, and it didn't seem like they were that smart. It didn't seem like they were that intelligent. It's like, okay, if they can do it, they're not very smart, I'm not very smart, then, I could probably figure this out too. So that was a critical time for me. Those commutes, driving back and forth, spending an hour each way, listening to different podcasts, gaining confidence. Jeff and I were having discussions. All the while, I took a corporate job that was based here in Omaha, Nebraska with ConAgra. So it was kind of at their corporate office at the time. And Jeff and I finally found a house in 2014. We bought our first house right before Christmas. And it was on the MLS, and we were driving through the neighborhood. It was a perfect little neighborhood for us. And this was just kind of an experiment. We just bought a house as an experiment, and we both put a little bit of money in. The reason that I had money was because when we moved from California to Omaha, the market was still a little bit soft. And so we held onto the house and rented it for a year and a half. And then when the tenants moved out, I was in Omaha. I didn't know that the market was coming back so strong at the time in California. And I thought I was gonna have to like short sale my house. So I contacted an agent, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we can sell your house for like $310 or $320 or something like that." And we bought it for $240. And when we left California to come back to Omaha, we had to hold the house because it wasn't going to sell for above what we owed. So I mean, we had like $60,000 or $70,000 of appreciation on our California home, in a year and a half, 2 years while we were in Omaha. So sold that house, and that's what gave me the chunk of money. And Jeff already had some access to funds that were able to go 50-50 into our first deal on a house that we paid somewhere around $78,000 for. Just a little old home, a little 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a decent part of town that I was heavily involved in the flip, and doing some of the demo and installing some stuff. And I got some help from some painters because I was still working full time. And I think we ended up making, we sold it for somewhere around a little over 100, and we made $11,000 on that first flip. And that was like a huge high five for both Jeff and I. Like, we were both really excited because we'd both managed to do something part-time. Jeff was not very involved from the beginning, but I was able to manage it, weekends and just phone calls during work and during my day job, just to get the thing done and get it sold. And we didn't lose money like that. We considered it a win, just like having the experience and not losing money and making a little bit to do it again. So over the course of the next 2 years, 2014 and 2015, we just did deals that fell into our lap. So Jeff had a really good relationship with a short sale agent locally here that was able to get us a few short sale deals over those 2 years. Then, we found a couple of houses on Craigslist. I would always be looking on Craigslist. Now, Facebook Marketplace probably has more available. But we just negotiated some of those off-market deals where we thought we could get, where there was room in the deal. There was really no big strategy to like our deal analysis or how we were going to add value. We just knew that it seemed like a good deal.
Yeah.
So over the course of those 2 years, 2014, 2015, we did, I think, 8 deals. I think we did 3 in 2014 and then another 5 in 2015.
And you were still working full-time?
I was still working full-time, and Jeff was even less involved than I was. So I was basically running the flips. Jeff was building his team out, and he was starting a title company and starting his Outbound Calling company and some of the other ventures that he's since started. But I was running the flips, and Jeff and I would still go to the houses initially and kind of do the walkthrough. One of them that was a pretty neat deal. Jeff and I were going on a couples trip with our wives. So we both took our wives to Mexico. One of the houses that we bought, it was like an estate deal that was referred to us because of somebody on Jeff's team who knew somebody who they inherited this house. They just want to get rid of it real quick. And we bought it for somewhere around 35 or 40,000. We put it up for sale as is while we were in Mexico with our wives. And I think it sold for like 70. We ended up clearing around 30 grand on the sale. And that was our first wholesale. Like we did nothing to the house. We cleaned it out, cleaned it up. We put it on the market, and I think we just said, hey, we'll review all offers in 5 days. And that was like when we got back from Mexico. So we got a bunch of offers while we were gone, and we ended up getting, we ended up taking the best offer. But that's when I think we kind of saw the light that like investing is not about flipping. Investing is about buying right and putting the asset back on the market, at a competitive price. Yeah. So that was the first wholesale deal that we did where we did not clean it up. All the other ones we were fixing up, and we were making less of a margin, and we made less money on those other flips than what we did on that wholesale. So that was eye-opening for us to have that deal go through. Yeah. And it was just a matter of buying it low enough. So all the while I continued to educate myself, podcasts. And, one thing that I think is when you stop, when everybody has an idea of what investing is when they're watching HGTV and they watch people fix up houses. But when you really listen to podcasts, you learn that it's all about marketing sales. It's not about making a house look nice. It's about marketing and getting a great deal under contract and being able to either reassign that deal to somebody else, or quickly add value if it just needs a little bit of carpet and paint, or wholesale, which is what we prefer to do. So we started to learn about marketing. In 2016, we had, in the middle of the year, we had like 4 or 5 deals under contract that were pending that we were going to be buying. Some of those were off market. There was a couple of short sales, but Jeff and I had been strategizing a way for me to quit my job. And there was enough in the pipeline for me to jump. I had 0 savings. Wife was a stay-at-home mom, 4 young kids. And I quit my day job because there was enough in the pipeline that I knew that, just with those deals that we had coming, that there was, $60,000 to $100,000 worth of profit. And all the while I could spend 100% of my time focusing on building a machine that could help us acquire more houses. So,
real quick before we move on, I feel like there's two chapters here. There's the part-time, there's the Clint that figures out about real estate investing and the part-time investing with you and Jeff. And then there's the next chapter, which is like leaving your job and then you blow this business up to what it is today.
Correct.
And so first I want to dive into what kind of attracted you to start listening to podcasts? And it sounds like you started listening to podcasts more geared towards wholesaling and flipping as opposed to like the buy and hold strategy. Was there any reason behind that, or how did you choose?
It's just kind of whatever topics were being covered. And luckily the podcasts that I was listening to, they had a variety of investors come on. Mm-hmm. So it was wholesalers and flippers. And I should mention that Jeff and I, our goal in starting all of it, I remember the conversations that we had in 2016. In fact, I remember building an Excel sheet out with him with rental properties. I said, wow, if we were cash flowing $300 per single family home, what would it look like if we had 100 homes cash flowing $300 each a month, which obviously is 30 grand a month, right?
Yeah.
So 30 grand a month of passive income, while those houses are being paid down. So the model that we intended to get into from the very beginning was a buy and hold model, to hold rentals. But what I knew needed to happen is that we needed to buy those at a discount to be able to leverage equity so that we could make it a repeatable, systematic process. So the flipping, wholesaling, wholetailing end of the business became a necessity to be able to acquire not just flips, but rentals as well. So right. I didn't spend a lot of time educating myself on the rental process. My grandpa had rentals growing up, and my parents have like 6 rental properties right now that I think are paid off. My dad was an independent contractor his entire life, so it is their retirement. Like my parents are basically retired, and it's because they own 6 homes outright that they're able to rent out. So I'd always had known that would be
the end game.
Yeah, an end game. And so did Jeff. And Jeff didn't care about the flipping business. Neither one of us really cared or were very emotional about, making beautiful flips. It was very much a numbers game for us. And we instantly were trying to figure out how many flips do we need to do to be able to buy a rental. So in 2016, when we started that chapter 2, when I went all in, it was in June of 2016, I quit my job. We I think ended up doing about 15 or 16 deals that first year. But we bought and held 5 houses. We realized that was probably too many. We didn't have enough profit to cover all of our tax obligations. So it made for kind of a tight 2017. Going into 2017 was a little bit tight. And we realized we probably needed to flip a few more houses and have more profit and some more, some more savings to be able to buy those 5 rentals. So we slowed down a little bit and said, okay, let's figure out how to get the flipping machine running. And, rather than keeping 1 in every 3, maybe we need to keep 1 in every 5 or 1 in every 6 of the houses that we're buying. So, but again, the initial reason for getting into it was all about buy and hold, because flipping and wholetailing and any wholesaling business is all still just a job. It may be a very lucrative business, but it is a job. When you quit doing it, the income stops.
Right.
So that's why we're like all in on rentals, rental portfolio.
And I agree. I'm kind of in the same I feel the same way. So let's dive in a little bit, because a lot of people, they get into real estate and, some people get into it to end up building passive income for their retirement, but some people want to get into it to change careers and leave their full-time kind of rat race job like you were in with corporate and ConAgra. Mm-hmm. Or, I'm kind of in the same spot. I'm getting ready to leave my job, my full-time job, and go to real estate full-time. So what was kind of the, how did you decide to make that leap? And if you could do it over again, was there anything you would do differently when you did make the leap from full-time to, part-time investor to full-time investor?
No. There was just something in my bones. I just knew I had seen enough success from doing the part-time stuff, and to know that I was spending 40 to 60 hours a week in a corporate job, sitting in a cubicle, spending those hours, giving it to the company. I knew that if I could refocus those hours to real estate, that I could make it work. Like I knew enough at that point because I'd been listening to podcasts. I knew what needed to be done. I understood that I was going to need to start marketing. So I had enough education at that point to know that I could do it. The only thing I would have done differently, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. I wish I would have honestly started in real estate right out of school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we all wish the best time to get into real estate was 20 years ago. But, I waited until I was 36. Was I 36? I'm 38 now. I might have been 35. Because we're 3 years in full time. But I wish could I started when I was 30? That'd be awesome. Or when I meet somebody who's in real estate investing and they're like 25, I'm just like, I'm jealous because they just get that head start. But part of me, so there was that drive. And then part of me, just like I said, like after sitting in so many stupid meetings at work, trying to fix problems that were lilliterally, there was no gain to me in fixing a problem. There was a gain to ConAgra. I can go save the company $1 million, but I'll probably still get a 3.5 or 4% raise at the end of the year and a pat on the back. Yeah. It just seems silly after a while. Like I hated wearing business casual, like khaki pants and sitting in meetings, pretending like I was important. Like it all just felt like I was inside the matrix, and I was just growing so tired of it. I remember telling Jeff, I was like, dude, I'm really quitting. I was like, I'm putting in my 2 weeks on Friday. He was like, and I think it kind of woke Jeff up because he realized, like, we'd both been kind of strategizing and planning. I think he was like, oh dude, are you serious? You're really going to do it? I was like, yes, like I'm quitting my job. So, I mean, it was still scary. And, I had full support from my wife to do it. Like I said, we didn't have any savings. All I had was debt and, a stay-at-home wife and 4 young kids. But there was just a part of me that knew it would work. So it didn't feel reckless at the time. Like I kind of timed it so that I was I waited until the very last day that I needed to work so that I could still get my annual bonus from the previous year. So I got a little chunk of change on my way out the door when I was leaving ConAgra, but I don't know, just something in my bones.
Yeah.
I just knew it was time.
I feel
I think you might be experiencing the same thing. It was like, it's time. Like
the same thing.
You see the potential. And I think educating yourself and seeing how successful people can be in real estate and create passive income along the way and live the life of their dreams. It's just, there's only so much inspiration that you can handle before you're like, okay, I'm going to do this for myself.
Yeah, no, totally. And like for me, there's so many days where you're like really not that productive at your job because there's not there's stuff to do, but sometimes there's like downtime and you just feel like I could be doing something so much better for myself or to get ahead, but I have to be here. I'm like stuck.
Yeah.
For me, I'm stuck in a truck, or you were stuck at the office or whatever. It's like so, frustrating. But yeah, no, I definitely feel you. One quick question on that. So this is kind of off topic. What did you do? Everybody's always worried about their insurance, right? They're leaving a corporate job or their big company. How did you kind of handle your medical insurance? Because you had a whole family to take care of.
Yeah. I went on Obamacare.
Oh yeah. That's what
I went on Obamacare.
That's kind of what I'm planning.
Yeah. It was awesome. It worked really well the first year because my income, I was still under the income level. I think it was like if you made less than $120,000, like you could still qualify because my wife would stay at home and I have 4 kids. So because I had so many kids, it was like I was able to still qualify for the credit. Like I remember the coverage was like better than what it was, and I was paying less than what I was when I was with ConAgra. Now, year 2, 3, the last couple of years I got on Obamacare as well, but I made too much money, so I had to pay it all back at the end of the year. So whatever the stipend was that they gave me, I had to pay back like, $20,000 each year. I think I was paying somewhere in between $2,000 and $2,200 a month or something like that for coverage. So this year I'm going to do something a little bit different. I think I'm going to go out and just get some independent coverage that doesn't cost me $2,000 a month.
Right.
But I went on Obamacare.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's
the nice part about Obamacare too. So it's off your stated income. So I would just say, I'm going to make $80,000 this year or $100,000. And it was still underneath the limit of what you needed to make. And you can go the whole year with the coverage. And then you just have to pay it back when you do your taxes the next year. And I was like, well, I'll just bet on my future self because next year I'll be in a better spot than what I am right now. So you do your stated income. I'm going to make $100,000. Then hopefully you blow that out of the water and there's enough money to pay back whatever the stipend coverage was at the end of the year. So that's what I did though. I went on Obamacare. I don't know if that's an easy resolution, but I mean, honestly, I know there's coverage plans for, $1,000 a month. You can cover your family. And, if somebody, I mean, it's different if somebody has serious medical conditions, or if there's, conditions within the family that have to be covered that are harder to cover. But
yeah,
I mean, if that's the one thing holding somebody back, they probably shouldn't be an entrepreneur. They probably shouldn't be an investor, because there's plenty that you can worry about.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was just a question that that's my plan too, to kind of go on the same type of thing. So I'm leaving at a certain time in the year where my company insurance will carry me to a certain time. And I'm like, okay, I'll pay this Cobra insurance for $2,500 a month for 2 months. And then January 1st, low income year, starting whatever. So
yeah.
Okay, cool. So back to the real estate. So what was your guys', because the first deal you guys got, you said it was on the MLS, you were driving around, you happened to see it. And then the next couple of deals after that, Jeff had a relationship with a short sale agent.
Mm-hmm.
What was kind of your first deal that you got that wasn't through an agent, or that was like an off market deal?
So we actually did not, even when I quit my job in 2016, we started traveling around and seeing some other investors that were part of Jeff's network. So Jeff was part of a young, successful entrepreneur group called Go Abundance. And so we went to California and visited a couple of different investors who, we also visited Brett Tanner in Phoenix. So we went on a few different trips. We like to go on trips anyway. So we went on some trips to go visit other investors and just started ripping and reapplying their strategies. So the very first marketing, like paid marketing that we did, was Outbound Calling. And we actually leveraged Jeff's calling company. So it kind of makes sense because he has 1,000 calls a day that we leveraged. We started with 2 callers. We bought some data from a company out of Chicago called Exact Data. We bought a list of 50,000 records, which came with a name, an address, and a phone number. And they told us it would be people, they call it their most likely to sell list. And they had some algorithm of people who would sell. So we started calling on that list. It took us a few weeks to really get any good traction, but we ended up getting a house under contract in a really good neighborhood. It's actually in Warren Buffett's neighborhood. He kind of lives in the old part of Omaha with nicer homes. We got it under contract for $260,000, and we ended up closing on it. We got the financing on it. We had to bring 20% down. We closed on it and listed it the same day and got it under contract for $350,000. So we sold it as is for $350,000 and bought it for $260,000. So the only thing we paid out was a 2.4% commission to the buyer's agent, and then we paid our acquisition guy who listed it for us a flat fee of $1,000. So we netted close to $80,000, I think, on the deal after cost.
And that's
that was a very first deal that we did that was from marketing. So we instantly put it all right back in. We added 3 callers. We joined our first mastermind group. It was like $25,000. We joined 7-figure flipping. And that was Justin Williams again, the same guy who the first podcast that I ever listened to, we joined his mastermind. And that's when I realized, Jeff and I both realized, like, oh, we need to be doing direct mail. And we started doing direct mail, and we need to start a Google AdWords page. And so we started doing pay-per-click and started a page, and we farmed everything out. I mean, we paid a company for data. We paid a company to run our PPC. And that's when, in 2017 is when things started flowing. That's when I think we did like 30 deals in 2017. Again, the majority of those were wholesales and flips, and we were adding to our rental portfolio as well. And since then, it's just been fine tuning, making adjustments to our marketing constantly to make sure we're marketing to the right people, to truly motivated sellers, and that the category, the avenue of the marketing makes sense as well. So direct mail, we started doing radio earlier this year. We've done some stuff that's similar to RVM. It's called voice broadcast. So we started doing some voice broadcasting earlier this year as well. And again, just constantly tweaking it to make sure that we're being creative, that we're reaching out to new people and changing it up. So 18, we did somewhere around 60 deals. And this year we're on track to buy about 80 houses.
Okay.
And we're now up to around 70 rental doors. And that's a mix of some smaller multifamily and mostly single family homes.
All right. So on that, to back up just a second, on that first deal that you guys got, that is what you'd call a wholesale deal, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
wholesale is just, again, you just buy the house, you don't do anything to it, you just turn around the next day and put it right on the MLS.
Yeah. Generally speaking, our wholesale deals will spend anywhere from $500 to $1,000 to clean out the house because people leave stuff behind, mow the lawn, trim the hedges, and then clean that, like do a professional cleaning on the house too. I mean, and it doesn't mean that it's a nice house. It doesn't mean they're usually investor friendly type houses. So we're marketing those deals on the MLS. Needs a little TLC or bring your sweat equity, that sort of, or great rental property. Those are the wholesales that we put out there on the MLS that need work. And the way that we market those deals, we simply list them at the ARV minus our repair costs. So our margins, we're actually making better margins on it because now all we're doing is removing our extra risk of investing the time and effort in rehabbing the property. And we're passing that savings on to the next buyer so that they can go rehab it however they want to.
Yeah. And then when you found this deal, you got that from your outbound calling, but you guys never actually did the calling yourself. You immediately hired, because you were partnered with Jeff and he had his calling company, but for somebody that's just getting started, they could do the same thing, right? They could just find an outbound caller. Is that what you recommend, or should they try to do it themselves for a little bit?
Well, it depends on how much time you have and how much time you want to spend. Luckily, we tapped into Jeff's team very quickly. So one of his agents, Andrew, became our acquisition manager. That's the first role that I always recommend somebody who's starting an investment wheel, or the first role that should be added is somebody who can work all of the leads. And if you're the one that is building the business, the investment company, you're likely not going to want to spend hours every day working the leads that you've generated. So the first position that we added was an acquisition manager. And that was simply to vet all the leads. But in terms of calling yourself, I would say that if you're starting out and you're hungry and you don't have the budget to pay a caller $3 to $5 an hour, by the way, you can negotiate that, and you don't have that in your budget, I would say then, yeah, you could, buy a subscription to a three-way, to the Mojo dialer, and start three-way dialing so that, all you have to do is spend some money on some lists or get some data and start calling some niche lists. So I don't recommend it. Whenever you can farm something out to somebody else at, $5 an hour, it just depends on what your time is worth. And if you're building a business, then you should be working on your business, not in your business. So if you get stuck in a wheel of, I got to call for 2 hours every day, like I got to hop on the dialer and call all these numbers, and then now you just generated a bunch of leads. So now there's just more additional follow-up that you have to do on the back end. You might get stuck in your business. And you see it a lot of time with like blue collar companies where like the owner of the company, like let's say, a guy owns a painting company or an HVAC company, and he never steps out of his business. He's like an owner operator. Like, the owner is the guy who also is installing your HVAC. I love working with those guys because they care, they're passionate about their business. They'll give you a great deal because they have very little overhead, but they just get stuck in from a growth standpoint. If you're working in your business, it can be very challenging to grow that business because you're stuck inside it.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge is too, partly is, people are afraid to spend that money, but sometimes they don't know what they're going to do. They figure, okay, well, right now I have nothing to do, so why am I going to pay somebody else to do this task? But I think it probably comes down to, if you farm that task out and pay somebody else for it, then your mind opens up because you're like, okay, well, I don't have to do that. So what can bring in more business? What can I be doing? Right. So then you move to the next thing. But if you never kind of make that disconnect of, hiring the lesser dollar per hour stuff out, then it's hard for you to think outside
Yeah,
the
I mean, I
box?
think if you're starting the investment business, you need to be focused on processes, systems, people, relationships. I mean, if you think about the time that Jeff and I have just spent building relationships with some of our local banks. I mean, we've spent hours and hours that we built out a PowerPoint presentation, invited, got referrals of who are investor friendly banks in town, invited them into the office, met with them, had discussions. Like, there's always something that you can work on to be building a business, working on systems, working on processes, so that you can plug people, the right people, into the right role, and kind of watch it spin that way. And one thing that I learned very on, especially Jeff is a great example of delegating and replacing himself, is that you have to be able to create roles where you can replace yourself, unless you want to be stuck in that role. So one thing I love doing is going on appointments when we generate leads, and the acquisition managers schedule an appointment, a seller appointment. I still go whenever I'm available. So I'll go on 5 or 8 appointments every week, if I don't have something else in my schedule, just because I enjoy it. And I'm okay with that. That's something that I want to be involved in, and I feel like it's a value add activity. Like, it's to be able to negotiate the deal, meet with sellers. And I really appreciate it. I spent 90 minutes in a home last week on Friday with some sellers who had just lost their 14-year-old grandson to cancer. And we cried on the couch together. It was a very powerful moment. So I love negotiating the deal, but I also love meeting with people and seeing that part of the transaction transpire as well.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I understand.
Yeah.
So I want to move on to where you guys are now in your business, between buy and hold properties and your wholesaling business. But first, an actionable thing for somebody that's just wanting to get in to wholesaling. You think direct calling is better than direct mail? If somebody really wanted to get into it, what's the first thing they should do? Should they buy a list of houses, start calling the houses, start mailing the houses, and then how do they get financing or funding or find a buyer's list for the house?
Yeah, I would say first steps for anybody who wants to get involved. First of all, if they're not listening to podcasts like this, then they've missed the mark. If they have not spent a good couple hundred hours of time educating themselves, and it's free education. I'm pretty sure you don't charge people to listen to this, right, Justin?
No.
This is free.
Yeah.
So there should be a couple hundred hours of time that they've spent, extracurricular time that they've dedicated to just learning. Because again, you can learn so much by listening to fortune builders. I mean, podcasts like this from other people. It's all free knowledge and it's out there. So just go take it. So that's step one, is educate yourself. And I get frustrated when people ask questions, who haven't done any homework or haven't tried to educate themselves. Cause it's well, it's all out there. Just go take it. Totally. Go listen and go do it. But I would recommend, specifically in the marketing end, I would recommend direct mail first as your first avenue of marketing. And I'd recommend that as a new investor, that you join up your local real estate meetup group that's meeting once a month. Start knowing who the players are in town, just to network, to understand who you can disposition properties to and who you can buy properties from, because I've done both with competitors of mine in my same market. I've bought properties from and sold properties to. So that's a great free way to start getting into investing and start gaining relationships with key players in town. So that's where, when we went to the RIA, I met a guy who referred me to the bank that I still use today. And this was 4 years ago. He told me he was like, oh yeah, we use Frontier Bank. They're amazing. And I asked him for the contact or for an introduction. We got that introduction. We still use that bank today. They're our main bank that we use for flipping houses. So that's a huge piece. I'd recommend direct mail, and I'd recommend a niche list. So if you're starting out, you should make sure that you're going after a highly motivated seller. And those most likely to sell, there's probably a few different criteria that you should be looking at, or the characteristics of a motivated seller. But absentee owners are huge. Anytime somebody owns a home that they don't live in, they are way more likely to sell that thing than if they're living in it for a lot of reasons. Probate is big. Pre-foreclosure is huge. Somebody behind on their payments. Equity is important. So do they have at least 50% equity in their home? Age is pretty important for us. So 50 years or older, 50% are equity. So we call that our age and equity list. We look at both how old are they and how much equity do they have. So they should, somebody should be marketing to niche lists in whatever zip codes they want to buy houses in, or where they feel like they're going to be able to do well in. Generally, you can research and figure out where most of the cash transactions are happening in real estate. Those are hot areas to market in because you're going to be able to acquire properties or wholesale properties to other cash buyers in that market. But I would recommend direct mail just because the leads don't take as much nurturing as what they do, like outbound calling. Outbound calling is a cold call, and it's a lot of nurturing to get them to the finish line. Whereas at least with direct mail, they called you. They got your postcard and they called you. So
Right.
that's my long answer.
Yeah, cool. No problem. So yeah, that's a perfect little scenario. If somebody wants to get started, they, first educate themselves, start learning as much as they can. 2, they need to start talking to people, local real estate meetups, and even online. There's online masterminds that they can join and just ask questions.
Facebook groups.
Groups. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask the questions. I mean, don't be like kind of overbearing and expect somebody to be your mentor when you just met them, but do your due diligence and ask questions as you go, and then get a list. So like List Source or Reonomy,
List Source,
or something like there's plenty of listings out there. You can
go scrape your local county site too. I mean, you can get onto your assessor site and look at all kinds of data.
Yeah. Okay. And then once they get that, they start direct mailing, or they can cold call if they want to use a cold calling call service. They can look up scripts, right, from ask their fellow investors in the area for scripts, or online, just like Bigger Pockets has like scripts, like cold calling or wholesaling scripts. Then in the networking part, you'll meet some buyers. Hopefully you'll ask around for some buyers. You'll look on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, or whatever. And then you just go out there, you find a property, you talk to the owners, and then you kind of like learn the steps from there, right? It'll just kind of build on as your property goes. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that, if somebody has spent hundreds of hours educating themselves through podcasts, through webinars, through YouTube videos, there's a point where you're ready. There are people who I would consider habitual educators. Like, I know there's guys that have been showing up for the RIA for like 5-6 years. They've never bought a house. They probably never will. So best of luck to them. But for me, it's like I reached a point where I was like, okay, I know enough. Like, I've invested time and effort in understanding what all this is and how it all ties together. So I think that it's just kind of, once you put those hours in,
Yeah, no, totally. So, okay. So there's a little actionable section. Hopefully somebody can take some
it's rambling.
Yeah, rambling, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's good. Okay, let's move forward. Where are you guys at now? You have like 70 doors, you said. In 2019, you're going to maybe close 80 deals. Is that right?
Yep. We're on track to do 80 deals this year, and we've added about 20 single family homes this year to our rental portfolio. And some of them are a higher price point. The strategy that we've leveraged is the BRRRR strategy this year, which has been big for us. We have a local bank that will refi us out at 85% loan to value. So if we're buying them, 40% below market value, and we're able to refi out and not just pull our initial investment out, plus our rehab dollars, where there's actually a positive cash gain that we're pulling out, that we're able to rip and reapply. So we're basically using the same money over and over and over and over to keep adding properties to our rental portfolio. Okay. So, the BRRRR strategy is big, which I don't know if you've talked about the BRRRR strategy. I imagine you have a time or two on your podcast, but buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, I believe is the right order. But we have a local bank that will essentially, they will fund 85% of the ARV even before we fix it up. So we're pulling all of our cash out within a few weeks of when we buy a property. If we decide to keep it and hold it as a rental, we're able to pull all of our initial cash out plus the extra funds that we'll need to rehab it and then some. So we've added 20 doors this year and have a few more that we'll add by the end of the year for rentals, maybe actually probably 4 or 5 more that we'll add. Jeff and I want to get involved in the multifamily space, like larger multifamily. So 20 to 100 units, to even over 100 units. We haven't taken the time. I've started to do some education. I went to like a 2-day seminar thing in Dallas this summer, but we really haven't taken the time to market to and start building relationships with brokers for multifamily stuff. Mm-hmm. But that is a goal of ours is, we want to be at 1,000 doors in the next 5 years, and it gets pretty challenging to do that one home at a time. So if we can add 20 or add 100 or add 200 units at a time, our goal becomes much more feasible and realistic.
Yeah. And 1,000 buy and hold, like rental income units.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Added to our portfolio. That is our goal.
And a lot of this you just talked about, it seems like to somebody that's like newer in the industry, it seems like there's a ton of stuff. You're like, oh man, you have all these relationships with banks and all this stuff. And you guys obviously have credit lines with banks, and this bank will give you this great deal of 85% LTV. But what people need to understand is that didn't just come overnight. You guys didn't just all of a sudden out of nowhere say, hey, I met this bank and they're going to do this right away. But it comes from you guys' track record, right? You've you've been out there networking, marketing, doing the deals. And over time, it's like a hockey stick. Like it's slow. And then all of a sudden it just like kind of starts shooting up. And that's where you guys are.
I think with Frontier Bank, I mean, we brought them in and met with them, and we were still new. We were only a year into our process, but we were able to show them some pictures of some flips that we had done and our profit and our small rental portfolio. And we asked them, they were at the end of the meeting, they're like, well, what do you guys want? And we said, we want $1 million credit line with you guys. And they came back and gave us $400,000 credit line. And on that credit line, we needed to put 10% down, and they would fund the rest of the property with very low origination fees. I think it's like it's $200 to do a loan. But within 6 months, they bumped it from $400,000 to $1 million. And then another year later, they're at $1.5 million. So now we can buy $1.5 million of real estate with only 10% down, with $150,000 of our own funds. And I mean, for us, $1.5 million doesn't go as far in your market, but our average purchase price is $90,000. So that means we can basically buy about 15 houses, all with bank money, and we just have to have $150,000 into it.
Yeah, and then once you go ahead.
The relationships are definitely they're one at a time, and everything's stair-stepped. But again, once you free yourself from that day job to focus on building a business, if you're not stuck inside of it, you can create those relationships and build those systems and processes to scale up quickly. One of my mentors in the 7-figure flipping, I think that's still what it's called, mastermind group, his name is Bill Allen. He was just starting out investing. He did 3 deals, wholesale deals his first year. His second year, he did over 70. So it's like, if you have the right drive and mindset and you've educated yourself, you can accomplish pretty ridiculous things in a quick amount of time. Jeff and I try to constantly challenge ourselves and surround ourselves with people who are doing a lot better than us. So, we're around investors who own 500 doors, or who own 1,000 doors or 2,000 doors, or wholesaling companies where they make $400,000 or $500,000 a month profit in their wholesaling business. So those are the people that we're surrounding ourselves by. We constantly feel like we're chasing people who are better than us. We've never arrived, and we don't feel like we've arrived. I certainly don't feel like we've arrived. But yeah, I think surrounding yourself with the right people kind of pushes you into doing more and doing it quicker.
Cool. Okay. So so you kind of the moral of the story, and it seems like this is what happens on every episode, is like to educate yourself and network with the more people, the better, right? Because the more people you need to keep stepping yourself up to the next level, and surround yourself with people that are above you. Don't never talk to your old friends, but maybe just like limit your time and try to meet new people. Something.
I try to help anybody out any given time. Like I just spoke at our local RIA a couple of weeks ago, and anytime I have a chance to like help out a new investor in my market, or an investor anywhere, I still take the time to do that because there's plenty of people who have given me time all along the way. But I think it's making sure that you're at least proactively, consciously getting in front of and spending time and networking with people who are doing big things has made a big difference for us as well.
Right. All right. So you kind of alluded to where you guys are going. You guys want to get into the bigger multifamily. You want 1,000 units in 5 years. Where are you headed as far as the wholesale business? Are you going to continue to keep the wholesale business going? And then my second question to that is, where do you see the wholesale business going with where the economy is and what's going to happen in the future?
You know, I'm fortunate to be in the middle of America, to be in a conservative part of the country where we don't have the crazy peaks and valleys that you do in California. So luckily, we can mitigate those storms a little bit easier. We are seeing a little bit of a market slowdown here right now. So we try to be a little more aggressive. I mean, it's wintertime for us, so things slow down anyway. But I mean, for us, we try to buy at 75% minus repairs. We might reduce that by a few percent. I mean, in 2008, we saw the market turn by about 8% here in Omaha, which is pretty conservative to what it did in other markets during the big downturn. So I don't expect anything crazy here to happen. I'm not trying to speculate too much, but we just try to make sure we don't get in over our heads on projects that we don't have any business being a part of. So we know where our sweet spot is historically, and we try to stay in that lane.
So 75% minus repairs, you try to adjust that a little bit, like down to like 72 or 70% minus repairs?
Yeah. So as we come into the winter now, and as the market seems to be softening a little bit, we're being a little more aggressive in our offer price. We're closer to 72, 70%, depending on the price, depending on the location and condition of the property. There's other variables there, but we always make sure that we're at least 75% minus repairs.
Okay. And then you guys are going to continue with the wholesale company to kind of fund.
Yeah. So because we have two acquisition managers, we now have a marketing director who's in charge of all of our marketing spend, which we spend around $20,000 a month. We have my older brother is our project manager. So he manages all the rehabs for both our rentals, our wholesales. He manages basically asset management, and our flips. We have 2 full-time callers, so we'll leave that business in place. It'll always stay intact, regardless of what Jeff and I go focus on. That business will stay in place because it is a system that is able to almost run itself. So there's no need to get rid of it if we take our focus off of it, we still need to give some attention to it. But the business does really well without a lot of focus or attention from Jeff or me.
Cool.
So that will stay in place. We'll always be adding single family homes to our rental portfolio, and pulling the best ones out of what we acquire and holding them. So keep the best, sell the rest. Yeah.
All right. Well, that kind of brings us to the next section, because since you are going to be moving in towards, or you want to move towards the bigger multifamily, what are your favorite resources to learn about a new niche or something? So like if you want to move to the bigger apartments, how are you learning about that so you're ready to go when you want to dive in?
There's tons of content out there now still. I mean, still podcasts are big. Facebook, there's people who market on Facebook like Jake and Gino. I went to an event, a 3-day event, and they were trying to upsell a lot. So it was a little bit annoying, but I learned a lot with, his name is Michael Blank, I think. Put it on in Dallas. So for me, I like to travel and I like to go to those events because it kind of forces me to go learn it. Like if I'm going to spend the money for a plane, a flight, and a hotel, and for $1,000 for a conference, like it almost forces me to isolate myself for 2.5 or 3 days and learn what I'm going to learn. So I like that now just because my attention span seems to get shorter and shorter every day. But like I said, the podcasts are huge. Like there's just so much you can learn from podcasts, and then people in our local market. I mean, I have good friends who own hundreds of units, and some of them have bought larger multifamilies, like 100+ units. So there's tons of local knowledge to be gained from them that I can tap into. So again, it's not that different than learning any other business. It's just making sure you're talking with the right people and asking the right questions.
Yeah, totally. And that comes down to networking too, because you probably didn't know all those people before you got started in real estate, but as you've grown, you've met all these people that have a bunch of units.
Yep.
So now you're become friends with them, and then you're able to ask them questions and kind of grow your knowledge that way. So yeah, makes sense. So do you have a favorite app that you use all the time that makes life easier running all your flips and everything and all your,
we've
sales?
used, my brother and I have used, it's called Wunderlist.
Okay.
Let's see. I think it's WUNDER. Yeah, WUNDER list. But it's kind of nice we'll actually put a scope of work in it. But you can create a checklist, share it with people, share it with subcontractors with light items that need to be done. And then they can check it off as they go. And it'll basically send you, it's always updated. And we start one for each project. So that's been helpful for us. We use Podio as our CRM. So I wouldn't call that necessarily an app, but that's been big for us this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a lot that I can share in that department. We love the Google Drive. I mean, whenever we have some deal analysis, we put everything into the Google Drive so that we always have access to it. The entire team can go in and log in and look at it. Cool.
Okay. And then your best advice for somebody that's just wanting to get into a wholesaling company, what would you say their number one thing they need to do? I think you alluded to it earlier.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a few things, but get around the right people. And if for your local market, because every market is different, I said, do some direct mail, get a niche list, start mailing to them, educate yourself. But one of the best ways you can do that is go to your local meetup and get a feel for what your market is doing and who the players are. Start networking, start taking people out to lunch who know what they're doing in your market. And you'll learn a ton.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, Clint, where can people find out more about you? You do have investor little workshop that you guys put on, because I did go out to it out there in Omaha, Nebraska, right? So tell us about that.
So I think the next one, we're waiting till next year to do another one. So we've done 2 workshops now. Jeff, my business partner, has a company called Elite Real Estate Systems, where he's training team leaders of real estate teams to be better team leaders and to grow their team. So he does that for, I think, once a month on Mondays. And then day 2, we just added, building an investment wing of the business. So I lead that discussion. It's a full day of chatter, all the same stuff that I've talked about on this podcast. So I don't know when the next one's going to be, but if you go to, if anybody is listening and wants to get a hold of me, they can email me, clint@dpomaha.com.
Cool.
Dynamic Properties is my company. So clint@dpomaha.com.
All right. And guys, real quick on that too. This is exactly what I'm talking about and what Clint's talking about with the networking, because I went out to his workshop. I didn't know Clint before this. I didn't know Jeff before this, but I went to his workshop. I learned a lot. And then I had the podcast, and I got Clint on the podcast, which is going to help you guys. It helps me. We're going to stay in touch in the future, and I'm sure I'll learn millions of things from Clint and Jeff and their team out there. So go out and network and start a big business like Clint. So, man, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for everything.
Thanks for having me.
It was awesome.
Thanks, Justin.
And I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks, brother. All right. Later.